Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Optics in Action, where we spotlight leaders with vision and clarity. And today I'm super excited to have Peg Pennington. She is the president of MoreSteam, and we're going to be talking about people and process and technology and how all of these things come together to enhance or enable improvement in organizations. So Peg, welcome to this episode of Optics in Action.
Hey, thank you so much, Ryan. I'm delighted to be here today.
Fantastic. So the first question I always like to ask guests is, why are you passionate about what you do? And we've talked a little bit previously, and so I have a sense of that, but I'd love for you to share that with the audience. Why are you passionate about what you do at MoreSteam and about technology and people? What makes you tick?
What I really like best about my job is that we're helping people to solve problems every day close to where the work is done. And the more that we can blanket the world with problem solvers, then the better off the world is going to be. So I always think about, you're walking into an emergency department, you have a really sick child and you want them to have care quickly. What's going on, behind the scene, the people and the processes that can help get your sick child seen that much quicker, get the care they need, get them released so that they can go home. If we can play a role on that, if I can play a role on that, then that's what I want to do.
Yeah. And there's application for these technologies and for these process improvement methodologies and for change management all across the industry, from healthcare to manufacturing to distribution and service organizations. And
even in functional silos too, right? So somebody might say, like, a lot of these techniques exist in automotive, but certainly even inside of automotive, they can make the HR process better. They can make the financial close better. Right? They can make the supply chain better. So it's not just this exists in all industries, it's in all functions of all industries.
I love that clarification, and I completely agree with that. And I've had roles in functional side of the business and business development side and operations. And you're absolutely right. That cross-functional collaboration and the ability to speak the same language across departments and across functions and with customers and with suppliers, all of those types of things plays a role. That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit about your background. So you've got a pretty interesting career that's brought you to the place where you're president of a technology company. Tell us a little bit about your background, because I think that plays into this interest in people and in process and in data and analytics. How does that all come together for you? Tell us a little about your background and history.
So I had I had worked at a couple of actually manufacturing companies, NCR and Emerson Electric. So I had a good background in operations. I was a finance major, but working in these manufacturing companies. And then complete career switch. I had the opportunity to start teaching at Ohio State University in the business school, the operations department, and I loved it. I realized when I was getting my MBA, to do more finance, of course, that I really wanted to teach. And it seemed like, how do you switch your career? How do you do that? And this opportunity presented itself. And when I was at Ohio State, I never said no. They said, would you teach statistics? I'm like, sure. Will you teach, supply chain? Sure. And one day a Six Sigma class came open. This is in 2000. This is at the very beginning. And they said, would you teach that? And I didn't even know DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, but I said yes. So I know that's contrary to popular belief, like learn to say no. That's not how I manage my career. I manage my career by saying yes to lots of opportunities. And at that point in 2000, I happened to meet a gentleman by the name of Peter Ward, who was on a journey to bring more lean, more Six Sigma into the university so that we could actually create problem solvers and critical thinkers in the MBA program. so that they had these skills when they were going to graduate. They could hit the ground running with the project management, the lean thinking. That was his vision, and our careers really crossed paths. And I happened to be there at a great time to just learn from him, learn from people like John Shook and Jim Womack that were coming to Ohio State to help start some of this foundational teaching at the university. So, luck and chance, played some part in that.
Well, I think I found the same thing. Like, I've said yes to a lot of things, and that's part of the reason that our family moved 7 times in 17 years to Asia and back twice. And it's like, you say yes, and then you get these new experiences. And I think it's really cool. So understanding your background. So you've got this background in manufacturing, you've got a background in academia, and you've now got a background of leading a technology firm. And when you think about all of those three, in every one of those three, I imagine that people and process both played a role. So what have you learned about the intersection of people and process kind of along that journey?
I think the most important thing is that you have to involve people in the process change, that doing process change without consulting, advising, gathering the input of the people in the process, that's a horrible way to do improvement. You want to not just consult, have the people with the best ideas are usually the people that are closest to the process. And they're really going to fight for the improvement that they think is going to improve the process versus your idea.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, I love industrial engineers. I think I would have been an industrial engineer, but I see them deployed in lots of companies and where they're doing change to you as opposed to involving you in it. I've seen lots of industrial engineers leading great sessions that involve the employees. And I think that intersection to me is the most important, because all of this is about respect for people. And when you're involving them in the change and getting their ideas, that is respect for the people and figuring out, how can we do this together? How can we make this process better?
100%. And I think the people who are closest to the problem, they know more about the problem than any of us. There's definitely a place for data and for data analytics and for simulations and for these things to enhance the ability of the people closest to the problem to solve and to articulate what's going on. I'll never forget my first Lean Six Sigma project. I spent literally weeks measuring thousandths of an inch of variation, literally weeks in a lab measuring these thousandths of an inch of variation. And at one point, I was looking at the data we were getting from manufacturing and the data we were getting from the lab, and I'm like, things just aren't matching up. Like, we're testing all these detail factors and seeing thousandths of an inch of variation, but in real life, we're seeing a quarter inch, right? It's like these things are just moving.
Right.
And on a call one day, I asked the lead operator, I said, how do you all set up this piece of equipment?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget his response. Like, this was this moment of, I was very focused on the data and analytics. And he's like, well, we just eyeball it. So we're measuring all this short-term variation of different nozzle sizes and pressures and viscosities and all these technical things, which we learned a ton of stuff, but he's just eyeballing it, right? It's like, they're just using the rule of that looks pretty good. So that completely changed my perspective about, okay, well, the equipment can hold very, very tight tolerances. How do we integrate and incorporate with the people, the way they're setting up and the way they're making adjustments? What can we learn from them? Because that gentleman had more years of experience adjusting machines than I was alive at that point in my life. And they just have so much knowledge and insight. When we marry these two things together, we actually got a patent for the tool that came out of that whole thing. But it wasn't because of the data analytics. And it wasn't because we had an experienced operator. It was that intersection of those two.
Right.
So that is that the type of thing you're talking about?
Totally. And I think that brings up the point of when you're working on these kind of process issues, going to where the work is done. And some people call it Gemba, but the place where the work is done, but going and observing and seeing, if it's a computer, if your work's done on a computer, go actually observe, what's a call center person doing? How many screens do they have to look at to answer a question? That's their Gemba. And how can you make their life better? Or how could you have seen, like, looking at that operator, oh, he's just eyeballing that setup, and you're trying to get to this measurement system analysis.
Yeah. So how are your technology platform, how is that enabling organizations and practitioners to go to the Gemba and to marry up the data analytics and simulations and the training that they're getting with the practical implementation? What are the things that you're doing at MoreSteam to help people and organizations through that journey?
So MoreSteam is educational technology provider, and we have many products, but I'll talk about a few of them. The first one is just e-learning. So that platform is in 9 different languages. It could range from lean all the way up to master black belt. And we do something called blended learning. So in our e-learning modules, there's lots of practice and activities, and we want you to download data sets and get your hands dirty as you're going through this, because again, we want to help companies make problem solvers. We want them, and if you kind of go back to, like an original Toyota, they're going to have one for one. Well, most companies can't have one sensei and one person learning. Nobody has that amount of capacity. So we're trying to help organizations get the teaching out there along with our data analysis tools, because that's really important to not just say there's a problem, but to show it with data and help them tell stories with that. So leadership wants to hear there's a gap, but let me tell you, here's the gap. Here's the reasons why we have this gap. And, how does that connect to our business? And what are we going to do about it? They want that story, and data is part of that. So we help to provide organizations with data analysis tools, as well as my favorite thing is our simulations. We do lots of games, whether they're lean games for teaching people office, teaching people in transactional environments, the concepts of lean office, or we have a simulation that's 3 days on data analysis, problem solving. So we talk about putting people in a flight simulator, right? So you're not going to put a pilot out there without like hours and hours of flight simulation time. So this is their flight simulation time. And all of the simulations for me, that is creating those is fun, and thinking about those and thinking about what's a good way for people to learn in those environments.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think the perspective that you have being in academics, being at Ohio State, and also being in industry, when you see those two things coming together, we can see incredible value both in teaching people and enhancing their skills, as well as the practical implementation that needs to happen for those skills to create value in organizations. So what do you see as you look at the current challenges facing industry today or over the next 5 to 10 years? What do you see as the biggest challenges of bringing the right talent and training the workforce of the future at the same time as engaging to make technical improvements and those type of things? What are some of the big challenges you see?
Companies consistently they're going to always want critical thinkers. And I think you hear that the students that are getting educated today are for careers that won't exist in 20, 30, 40 years. So we have to create people that, can look at a problem, articulate that problem, and then understand, how do I go about solving this problem? Whether we're going to be using the same tools as today, or even more, tools that haven't been invented yet. And certainly right now we're looking at how can AI help people solve problems faster.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we've tried to incorporate into our e-learning, are just all the tools that AI brings to help as you're problem solving. You could do things faster to get to an improved state, an improved future state faster. So I think those challenges. I also think about a lot. We have like small data versus big data. And everybody talks about, we've got all this big data, but a lot of times on the front end, you have data scientists. They're capturing observations about what's going on. Maybe they're pulling data from X or Instagram, or getting this customer experience data, and it's really dirty, but they're able to pull information out. But how does that get back into the process?
Right.
Otherwise, it's just sitting up front. It's like, yeah, I got some good voice of the customer. We're seeing some trends, but if you say, I want to get this back into the process, I want to make a shift in our production, how quickly can you do that? And if companies are practicing operational excellence, they have good standard work, they have good transparency up and down the organization, those organizations that practice operational excellence can shift a lot faster when they have those signals from the customer.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I love that.
Yeah, I think people don't think of Toyota as being innovative, but they're the number one car by cars being sold in the US. And I really think they hit that right with the hybrid versus, and they really seem to be capturing that market right now. But I think, again, they have that ability to switch to a more electric platform if that happens, and that gives them an advantage in the marketplace to, where do they need to hit to meet the customer demand.
Sure. And you mentioned AI a little bit, and I know there's so much buzz out there around AI right now. It's intriguing to see the types of support or the types of responses and integrations that can happen. How do you see that impacting organizations in the future? I love what you said about critical thinkers, so I don't want to lose that. But how do you see critical thinking and generative AI playing a role in some of this problem solving in the future?
Well, the people I think that work best with AI are people that are really good at prompt engineering, that they know how to ask, and it's all about continuing to ask questions. And we still have to have somebody back here driving the bus that's thinking about this and not just taking, obviously, what is said verbatim, but whether it's using AI to parse through customer feedback to help me do that quickly. What are the best observations you can pull from that? Or asking AI many times when we're doing operational excellence kind of problems, somebody else has solved that. So just querying out there, and I still want to talk to my engineers, the people in the process, to get all of their feedback. But what is something that we're not seeing? That somebody else has either seen gone wrong or applied as a countermeasure. So I think AI can be your, assistant along the way as you work on problems for the organization.
Well, Peg, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this episode of Optics in Action. How do people learn more about MoreSteam or about you if they're interested in diving deeper? How do they learn more about you?
You can come meet me on LinkedIn and link in with me. It's Peg Pennington at MoreSteam. I'd be delighted to connect with you. And come check us out on our website. It's a robust website, I'll tell you that. We have a lot of pages. It's MoreSteam.com.
Fantastic. And I'm kind of a self-proclaimed Sherlock Holmes buff. So I love one of the simulations that you've got, the zombie one.
Sherlock Holmes Zombie Hunter. Yes, you too can come solve the zombie problem.
That's fantastic. You've integrated a lot of fun into all of this. And so thank you again, Peg, for being on this episode of Optics in Action.
Thanks, Ryan.
Hey there, my name is Ryan Weiss, and I am the host of the Optics in Action podcast, where we spotlight visionary leaders who bring clarity and innovation to their industries. If you are interested in being a guest, or if you know someone who would be, you can find more information about the podcast and listen to previous episodes at opticsinaction.com. We'd be thrilled to have you on the show and can't wait to hear your story.